military strikes on Iran. We're going to get you all the details on the show today. Stay tuned.
Also on the battlefront, after France decided to deploy its military assets to the Mediterranean to protect friendly nations against Iranian attacks, Iran has now threatened European countries from joining the war, that they will get attacked if they do so. We'll bring you the latest on that. Let's start with the headlines first.
Lebanon's health ministry says 3 people have been killed in Israeli strikes on vehicles on Beirut's airport highway. Strikes come after a third day of Israeli bombardments in response to renewed Hezbollah attacks.
US Central Command publishes a video showing strikes against Iranian missile launchers, saying its forces are hunting and destroying them with precision, while accusing Iran of indiscriminately targeting civilians.
Saudi Arabia says it intercepted 3 cruise missiles outside the city of Al-Qaj as the US-Israel war with Iran enters its 6th day.
US Senate rejects a resolution aimed at curbing President Donald Trump's authority to continue military strikes on Iran, with 53 to 47 majority in the upper chamber of Congress, and largely backing the president's decision to attack Iran.
President Donald Trump rates the US performance in the war with Iran as a 15 on a scale of 10, saying the Islamic Republic's leaders were rapidly being killed and vows to push on.
Somebody said on.
India's Ministry of External Affairs rejects claims that Indian ports are being used by the US Navy in the Iran conflict, calling the reports false and misleading.
Nepal votes today for a new parliament 6 months after a deadly anti-corruption protest, with key contenders including a former Marxist prime minister, a rapper-turned-mayor and a Nepali Congress leader.
South Korea's benchmark Kospi surged more than 11% in early Thursday trading, rebounding as worries over global oil prices eased. Japan's Nikkei also climbed more than 3% at the open, following a strong overnight rally on Wall Street. Breaking news coming in. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says he can't rule out his country's military participation in the escalating war in West Asia.
Alongside his Australian counterpart, Anthony Albanese, he said that in Canberra, one can never categorically rule out participation. He added that we will stand by our allies, and the remarks come a day after he said the US-Israeli strikes on Iran were inconsistent with international law. Well, this is the breaking we're getting. The Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says he can't rule out his country's military participation in the escalating war in West Asia. Alongside his Australian counterpart, Anthony Albanese, he said that in Canberra, one can never categorically rule out participation.
All right, to discuss this further, we're now being joined live by Bishop Garrison, former senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense and current senior fellow and adjunct professor, National Security Institute at George Mason University Law School. Mr. Garrison, thank you so much for joining us. Let's just start with what we just broke for our viewers. The the participation of Canada and Australia. Now, a few days earlier rather, Australia had said that they don't wish to get involved. Do you feel the kind of reaction that Spain got from the US president has brought out these statements from other countries, and do you think they'll get involved?
Oh, yeah, no, thanks for having me. Honestly, I would have been more surprised if they had said categorically that they would not or could not be involved in any way, shape, or form in this conflict. Where this puts a lot of allies in difficult situations, and they're going to have to make some difficult decisions. But I think it would be detrimental to long-standing relationships if they were to say absolutely that under no circumstance they would step in. This just gives them some level of leeway of movement for future decision making should they decide that it's necessary for them to be a part of any type of operation.
Mr. Garrison, actually, Australia did rule out military role in the Iran conflict. That's headlines just from 3 days ago, and now we heard this statement. So, there has been a change in stance that we're seeing, and France already decided to deploy its military assets. So, do you feel now it's going to be just on paper, or do you really find more military assets from other countries and friendly nations with the US getting involved as US gets more embroiled in this?
Well, I mean, it's just too early to tell, and it also depends on what type of involvement we're ultimately talking about. There's already a need for some assistance in terms of just movement of civilians out of the theater of operations for the United States. So there are ways that allies can absolutely support what is some of the activities that are going on that deal more on the humanitarian side than any parts of the kinetic conflict. So again, these statements are just ultimately giving a lot of these allies some leeway to support the missions in a way that really resonates with their own citizens, because quite frankly, this isn't the most popular decision-making processes right now when it comes to this conflict.
Right, and Mr. Garrison, having talked about the ambiguity and the shifting stance, we also know that the Trump administration has been facing a lot of scrutiny over its shifting rationale as to the war with, Iran. And now the U.S. Senate has backed his military campaign with a 47-53 vote. Now, but we also know historically that a prolonged conflict without a clear endgame does, erode the domestic support. How vulnerable does that leave the political landscape in U.S.?
Well, I don't think that that vote is particularly the strongest in terms of supporting a president who has entered into a conflict. If you look at the actual vote, it's along partisan lines. So that's the first part. Next, we know that the Senate Congress, both House and Senate, are going to be potentially considering additional funding of this overall effort for the United States. And that's going to be a bigger task and a bigger test to see whether or not Congress is going to affirmatively support what the White House has done in entering this conflict. That's very different from the type of resolution that you're kind of speaking to here, and looking at curbing the War Powers Act. This is something which we're talking about actually appropriating funding to move forward with the conflict. So a lot more is going to have to come out and debate in the coming days and weeks.
Mr. Garrison, as far as now the war is concerned, when it comes to what's happening inside Iran, how much do you feel the interior workings of Iran have been? I'm not talking about military assets, of course, we're hearing of all the damage that has been caused. But when it comes to the leadership or a change in leadership, it pretty much seems to be in line with what the earlier regime was. They already have a successor in mind, and I think it's just a matter of time before it is formally announced.
Well, I think the one thing is clear, and you don't have to be any type of special intelligence analyst to understand this, but it seems as though the Iranian government was really anticipating at some point this type of attack, this type of operation, and they were several levels deep in their succession planning. So when they began to have these levels of attrition and they began to lose leadership, they have people in mind within the organization that can fleet up quickly and fulfill these positions. So ultimately, it's going to be almost a game of whack-a-mole when you talk about trying to determine who is going to be the best strategic target to actually engage in order to damage or collapse the overall government, the regime. So I think this is going to be something that we're going to find some difficulty in moving forward.
Right, and Mr. Garrison, while changing the regime is one thing, but ensuring what comes after is a completely different ballgame altogether. Now, how do we know that what has been unleashed now, how is it going to be contained? Because we understand that Iran is much more complicated, it's multi-layered. So what are the chances of it actually spilling over, as the signs are all there, and the war being a prolonged one?
And that's the problem. I don't think anyone can say with any type of fidelity at this point that within years, we just ended a 20-year quagmire when it came to the global war on terror within Iraq and Afghanistan. And this definitely could have the makings of another type of conflict in that same vein. Ultimately, if you're talking about true political change, true regime change, you're talking about a revolution amongst the people. The citizens of Iran have a great deal of autonomy. They have been under the boot of a dictatorship for quite some time now, and it is in no small part up to them, with support from the global community, with the backing of the global community, to rise up and push against it. But if there's going to be any lasting stability, and when you discuss or talk about change, that's how it's going to have to come about.
That change that you mentioned, Mr. Garrison, when the people tried to do it in Iran in January, the deaths were in the tens of thousands, and that figure keeps changing. But it was severe. Let's leave it there. But
severe, yeah.
I want to understand what can happen inside Iran in terms of an uprising when it is not armed. And if there is no way to arm, there is no armed uprising, and US doesn't have boots on ground. It doesn't seem like they want to have boots on ground either. It's going to largely be an air operation. So how does that bring about anything close to a change in the way things have been functioning? Because if there is a new head of state in the similar regime, in the similar manner of this regime, there will again be another development of missiles, which so essentially that erodes any chance of achieving any of the objectives that have been laid out so far.
Well, what you're talking about is going back to the overall strategy of a conflict of this magnitude, and that's not for me to disagree. To be clear, what I'm saying is that you can't win or you can't remove a regime. You can't have any lasting change within a government simply from airstrikes. Once the Israel and the U.S. government decided to go into this, there had to be a strategy that included some level of diplomacy, or at some level of, or to your point, of boots on the ground. And we have not seen, to your point, any type of buildup of that magnitude. You would be talking about troops in the tens of thousands, if not, more than 100,000 or so. Or you would know and understand that there were some type of regular special operations forces and other clandestine activity that were continuously going on. We have heard some early reports of the potential of arming some Kurds within the region with weapons to allow them to help with some type of revolution and help make it more organic. But again, we've seen this type of activity simply not work in the past. And it shouldn't be the business of external countries. If you want to see this happen properly, if you want to see this type of authoritarian government removed, which we all should, there is no small part of diplomacy and sanctions and other key levers within our diplomatic toolkit that need to be leveraged. And right now, all we're seeing is a campaign of bombardment that isn't going to change much.
Right, and Mr. Garrison, as the conflict is entering its sixth year, we're seeing there's a constant, a very steady volley of attacks and counterattacks. There are claims and counterclaims. Now, I just want to understand from a U.S. defense assessment standpoint, how long can Iran, realistically sustain itself? Because we understand that they have been leveraging low-cost drones against the U.S. But given everything, how long do you think they will be able to sustain themselves in this?
Just to supplement what Diksha is saying, sir, the economics is just not working out, because these are $35,000 drones going, and there are $1 million interceptors being used to take out these low-cost drones. It just doesn't add up.
And it was one of the first things that was flagged within the first couple of days of these campaigns, because the United States have been using a lot of its stockpile to support some of Israel's operations previously. And now, just a day or two ago, the White House had to meet with the defense and industrial base leaders to have in-depth conversations about how they could increase their output in building more munitions. So this is already in day 6. A problem that has already been identified, and Iran was already being focused on a war of attrition. That's what they're calling this. For them, it's an existential battle. It's a battle for for the government, for the regime's survival, and they were already looking at everything they could possibly do to elongate the timelines, to stretch this out, because it is their belief that the United States and Israel won't not only won't have the political will to do this, but ultimately it's going to be a question of the actual physical will of being able to make the proper munitions to maintain the type of bombardment that we've seen thus far.
Mr. Garrison, regarding the objectives, one can stretch them, one can understand the nuclear program and having a problem against a country developing nuclear weapons, which you do not trust. But for a country to develop its missiles and to have that as an objective to obliterate a country's missile program, is it not equivalent to saying that you can't have an army of your own, because it was a legitimate government in that country?
Yeah, part of the question here is, well, what type of missiles they have, what are the capabilities, the ranges of the missiles, how are they potentially being utilized, where are their targets? We've had these type of concerns, for instance, with North Korea previously, and their ability with conventional munitions to hit closer targets like Japan. So this isn't out of the realm of previous concerns within U.S. policy with its adversaries. A part of this too is the fact that you're also looking at static missile defense or missile systems versus some of the mobile systems that we're having, and trying to get an understanding of how many systems the country actually has and what they're doing with them and how they can potentially threaten Israel, who is ultimately our ally in this. So it's not simply that they have missile systems as a part of their military assets, but it's how they're deployed and what ultimate threats they're potentially making. So I don't think any country can ultimately say, when you're talking about conventional munitions, that you can't have X, Y, or Z, but ultimately we're going to ask questions, and if a threat is perceived, then countries are going to act accordingly.
Right, and while the threat has been characterized as existential by Israel as well, and now, of course, Iran, which claims that it was a war that was imposed on them, and it's not a war that has been initiated with them. Now, and if the conflict drags on, we know that the oil prices will rise. Of course, the security risks are going to increase, and there is no quick resolution in sight. And when we talk about the Strait of Hormuz, experts argue that it is too strategic, a waterway, and too pivotal to be closed for long off. And now US has said that it's going to take control. But how are the American people are going to be convinced of this prolonged war, given that they have been very anti this open-ended conflicts in the past as well that we've seen?
I think the current numbers right now are 21% of the American people voters polled said they supported the war, only 21%. And that number is going to go down, and is likely to go down fairly quickly as oil prices are potentially going to go up exponentially. So that's a lot of questions. And look, Iran has also said, and there's some open intelligence that ultimately says they have the ability to lay out mines, to actually place mines and bombs within the strait itself, and they plan to do everything they can to threaten any type of ships coming through. So you're going to see even more kinetic activity in that space. The OPEC countries have stepped up and said they're going to do what they can here in the short term to continue to increase their own oil production, to have a counterbalance to what we're seeing with the oil coming out of Iran. And the United States does have its own strategic reserves that, when necessary, can be tapped to help reduce some of the pressures there. But I don't disagree with you in the sense that something ultimately is going to have to be determined about how we're going to move forward in defense of the strait, and what the global community is going to find acceptable when it comes to ensuring that the flow of petroleum continues throughout that area.
Well, this is going to have global effects, more global effects very, very soon, and we're heading into day 6 now. No signs of it tapering down. Let's just hope for the best. That was Bishop Garrison joining us. Pleasure speaking with you always.
Thank you for having me.
And in other news, an official in the Kurdistan regional government of Iraq said the region rejects the use of its territory to launch attacks against neighboring countries.
And this is coming up after a very, very short break. So stay with us. This is World DNA. Coming right back. Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA. There is more to discuss on this side of the show as well. An official in the Kurdistan regional government of Iraq said that the region rejects the use of its territory to launch attacks against neighboring countries.
And all this while emphasizing that decisions regarding such matters fall under the authority of the federal government in Baghdad. The head of the Department of Foreign Relations in the Kurdistan regional government said that the region is not part of the ongoing conflict and does not aspire to become an arena for settling regional scores. He added that Erbil always seeks to be a factor of stability in the region. He stressed that the region will not allow its territory to be used as a launch point for attacks against neighboring countries. Now, Kurdistan Freedom Party in a post on X also denied the reports of any movement. They said that the claims suggesting Kurdish forces have crossed the border into Iran were false.
On Tuesday, CNN reported that the CIA was working to arm Iranian Kurdish forces with hopes of fomenting an uprising. The White House press secretary Karen Levitt called the story completely false, but confirmed that Donald Trump had spoken to Kurdish leaders. The Kurdistan region hosts camps and rare bases operated by several Iranian Kurdish rebel groups that have repeatedly faced cross-border strikes from Iran, which has long accused them of serving Western or Israeli interests. Estimates of the number of Kurds in Iran, it varies from 7 to 15 million. They reside mostly in northwestern Iran along the borders with Turkey and Iraq.
Now, Iran's Revolutionary Guards said on Wednesday that they had targeted armed opposition groups hostile to Tehran in the autonomous Kurdish region of neighboring Iraq. The Guard said in a statement that bases and headquarters of Komala and anti-revolutionary groups were hit with 3 missiles which were launched at 11 a.m.
The city of Erbil, the capital of the region, has borne the brunt of these attacks, while the cities of Soleimania and Duhok experienced fewer strikes. U.S. deterrent systems succeeded in intercepting the majority of the missiles and drones.
Well, a drone crashed into a residential building near Erbil airport after being shot down, causing damage to the building and nearby cars, but no casualties. Now, people in Ain Kawa area showed that residents and bystanders were inspecting shattered windows and damaged vehicles. And this as emergency services assessed the impact. People gathered near the wreckage after the drone struck the building close to the airport.
Meanwhile, Iraq's electricity ministry said on Wednesday that the entire country had been affected by a total power outage. Without identifying the cause, the Iraqi news agency citing the ministry said that the power grid has completely shut down across all Iraqi provinces.
And parallel to this, the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad has told its nationals that they should leave Iraq immediately. The statement came during this turmoil and said that the citizens in Iraq are strongly encouraged to depart as soon as possible and when they are safely able to do so, while a shelter remains in place until conditions are safe to depart. And with that, it's time for us to slip into a very short break on World DNA.
There is more coming up on the other side, so stay with us. Voting has officially begun in Nepal as polls opened in the country's first general election since the deadly youth-led anti-corruption protests that toppled the government just last year. This and more lined up for you. Come right back. This is World DNA.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Iron says, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
In an ever-changing, fast-paced world, identifying the pulse of global happenings is important. Because it is the pulse that truly measures the real nature of world events. It monitors the shifting geopolitical landscapes and anticipates what lies ahead. At WION World Pulse 2026, we tap into the heartbeat of events that matter to you and to the world. 7 pulsating themes, 100 plus thought leaders, 1 dynamic platform, WION World Pulse. The rhythm of the new world order. Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is one. Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
Vielleicht nur als Imposant.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Deeksha. I'm Shivan. Lots more to discuss on this side of the show. Let's start with the headlines.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says he can't rule out his country's military participation in the escalating war in West Asia. In his visit to Australia, he says Canada will stand by its allies.
Lebanon's health ministry says 3 people killed in Israeli strikes on vehicles on Beirut's airport highway. Strikes come after a third day of Israeli bombardments in response to renewed Hezbollah attacks.
US Central Command publishes video showing strikes against Iranian missile launches, saying its forces are hunting and destroying them with precision while accusing Iran of indiscriminately targeting civilians.
Saudi Arabia says it intercepted 3 cruise missiles outside the city of Al-Kharj as the US-Israel war with Iran enters its 6th day.
US Senate rejects a resolution which is aimed at curbing President Donald Trump's authority to continue military strikes on Iran. With 53 to 47 majority in the upper chamber of Congress and largely backing the president's decision to attack Iran.
Ministry of External Affairs rejects claims that Indian ports are being used by the US Navy in the Iran conflict, calling the reports false and misleading.
China announces a 7% boost to its defense budget for 2026 as Beijing steadily increases spending to counter the United States and enforce its claims over Taiwan and South China Sea.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un oversees naval destroyer tests, including sea-to-surface missile launch, claiming his country is arming navy with nuclear weapons after reaffirming military build-up goals at the party Congress.
China has set its 2026 GDP growth target at 4.5 to 5%, which is the lowest on record, as Beijing faces persistent deflation, weak consumer demand and trade tensions with the US. The targets were announced during the annual 2-session meeting in Beijing. Voting has officially begun in Nepal as polls opened in the country's first general election since deadly youth-led anti-corruption protests that toppled the government last year.
Now, the vote for Parliament's 275 seats pits old guard parties against young challengers. Nearly 19 million people are registered to take part in the ballot for the House of Representatives. These include almost 1 million first-time voters. Nearly 165 candidates are directly elected, while 110 are selected via proportional representation.
Well, the leading candidates include former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli and Balendra Shah, the ex-rapper mayor, taking him on in his constituency. Also in the race as aspiring Prime Minister is Gagan Thapa, the new head of the country's oldest party, Nepali Congress. From the Sarlai constituency, who aspires to end the old age club of revolving veteran leaders.
Former mayor and rapper Balendra Shah cast his vote at the Annapurna Vinayak School polling centre, but popularly known as Balendra Shah, the 35-year-old has gained immense popularity among the country's youth for rallying against the Oli government in anti-corruption protests that killed 77 people. He is currently dominating the race to become Nepal's next prime minister.
Corruption, unemployment, economic stagnation and inequality are among some of the key issues that remain at the center stage of this election. Perched between India and China, the Himalayan nation has seen political instability for decades now, with 32 changes in government since 1990. And for more, our correspondent Saloni Murarka is joining us live from Kathmandu. Saloni, this is the first general election since the youth-led uprising that toppled KP Sharma Oli, and we have 1 million new voters voting this time. Just take us through the general atmosphere on the ground, and what are some of the key issues that voters will be taking into account before casting their vote?
Well, the mood on the ground is that people want to vote for a change this time, and there is an extensive security arrangements that have been put forward by the Election Commission. At the moment, I am at a polling booth, which is a multi-Devi temple, which has been turned into a polling station for this day. And there, we can see the long, steady queues of people. And there is a steady turnout, and authorities say that as the day progresses, they will see a better turnout by the end of the day. And why this election is significant is because, as we know, that this is happening in the aftermath of the 10th protest, which met with a deadly crackdown, and that happened under the KP Sharma Oli's government. So this entire election has been painted as a contest between the new leadership and the old traditional political party. So the expectations for this election are set way higher than it has been ever before in our previous elections. The expectations for accountability is way much higher. For the Gen Zs, for the younger people, what they want is a decisive shift. They want a new leadership, and they are expecting for a better growth in the country's economy.
Saloni, we'll try to reconnect with you with a better connection. Hopefully, we'll need to resolve some of the connectivity issues and reconnect as the polling has started. We'll connect with Saloni Murarka, who's reporting from Kathmandu as Nepal goes to polls.
I think they were going to attack first. I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand.
Next up, let's take a look at the latest developments in the US-Israel war against Iran. An airstrike hit the Hezbollah stronghold of South Beirut after Israel issued a warning to residents.
Well, Lebanon's health ministry said that 3 people were killed in a pair of Israeli strikes on vehicles along Beirut's airport highway. Now, prior to these strikes, officials said that 72 people had been killed and more than 83,000 others were displaced since the start of the new round of fighting between Israel and Hezbollah.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's office says that Israel and the United States have made historic gains in their war against Iran. A spokesperson for Netanyahu also said that the attack was needed as Iran was using new underground bunkers to rebuild its atomic bomb program.
Well, Iran launched a fresh round of missiles at Israel, triggering alerts in several areas, including Tel Aviv, according to the Israeli military and Tehran state media. Now, there were no immediate reports of casualties.
Qatar's Prime Minister, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani, lambasts Iran's foreign minister during a call, accusing Tehran of trying to drag their neighbors into war. Turkey, meanwhile, summoned the Iranian ambassador after a missile apparently targeting a Cyprus base landed in Turkish territory. Turkish officials said a ballistic missile launched from Iran and heading towards Turkish airspace via Iraq and Syria was destroyed by NATO air defense systems. The defense ministry did not specify the missile's intended target. Iran has been hitting sites across the region in retaliation after the United States and Israel launched strikes against it on Saturday.
Now, the Omani Navy rescued 24 crew members of a container ship which was struck by missiles in the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian forces claimed complete control of the strait a day after Trump said the US Navy was ready to escort tankers through the channel.
Spain doubles down on its opposition to Washington's use of its bases against Iran after Trump's threat of trade reprisals. The White House said Madrid had now agreed to cooperate, but Spanish Foreign Minister José Manuel said that its stance on bases on the war in the Middle East on the bombardment of Iran has not changed at all.
He's a senior fellow at the Council of Foreign Relations, and this is what he had to say. Listen in.
Well, we just don't know what kind of government is going to emerge in Iran. I would say for now, the Israeli and the American operation is focused on changing this regime. Now, whether that means getting some subset of the Iranian government, some breakaway faction of the Revolutionary Guard, or some other pre-existing military/political formation, we don't know. But I do think that one of the reasons that this military operation is going forward is that the United States and Israel jointly decided that this Islamic Republic cannot be trusted. And there is a very long track record here of Iran having a nuclear program, of Iran killing people in the region. So one can question where this military operation is going. One can question whether there was a clear plan for the day after. But I do think that this is a regime that has been causing trouble in the Middle East since 1979. And, if one can see an Iran emerge that doesn't fall apart, that has a constructive government ready to work with its neighbors, with Israel, with the United States, then perhaps this will prove to be a success. But it is a very high-risk operation. The regime that comes next could be more radical than the regime it replaces. And this could also lead to chaos in Iran, which is exactly what happened when the United States took down regimes in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Libya, and in Syria. So in that respect, this is a very big gamble for Donald Trump.
While U.S. forces are expanding war zone against Iran, in the latest, as many as 87 have been killed, 61 missing after a U.S. submarine struck and sank an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean off Sri Lanka coast.
The U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth confirmed that the U.S. torpedo hit Iran's Iris Dana, claiming to be the first torpedo hit since World War II.
An American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death. The first sinking of an enemy ship by a torpedo since World War II.
When it was attacked, the Iranian frigate was sailing just outside Sri Lanka's territorial waters. Sri Lanka's Deputy Foreign Minister has confirmed that the 180-crew frigate issued a distress call during the early hours of March 4th, prompting Sri Lankan Navy to...
Injuries have been rescued. Sri Lanka's Defence Ministry said search operations are underway for the remaining crew of the Iris Dana. According to Sri Lanka's Foreign Minister, the warship sank 40 kilometers south of Sri Lankan coast.
So, being a maritime nation and as per the conventions in the search and rescue and the UNCLOS, we are obliged to respond any of distress out at sea, whether it is a ship, fishing vessel or fishing craft or the aircraft. We are the first responders, so Navy along with the Coast Guard and the Air Force, we responded positively and swiftly, and we could able to rescue 32 survivors, and still we are doing the search and rescue operation in the particular area.
Now, it is learned that there were 3 Iran warships operating in the area. One of these warships has taken refuge at the Colombo port. In fact, the ship which had been sunk by US is the same Iranian vessel which participated in an Indian exercise just weeks ago.
As rescue operations by Sri Lanka continue, the injured soldiers are currently being treated at a local hospital. Bodies of the dead sailors have also been brought to the hospital morgue. Sri Lanka's Navy and the Air Force earlier said that they were not releasing footage of the rescue since it involves military of another state. And Iran claims that it has launched a direct missile strike on a US Navy destroyer in the Indian Ocean and is now threatening to control the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, this marks one of the most dangerous maritime confrontations between Tehran and Washington in years. Here's a report with more details. Take a look.
The Iran-US war is expanding dramatically into open waters. Iran claims to have carried out a powerful strike on a US Navy destroyer operating deep in the Indian Ocean. It marks a major escalation in the ongoing confrontation. The attack allegedly took place roughly 650 kilometers from Iran's coastline, while the American vessel was reportedly refueling from a support tanker. IRGC claims it used Ghadar 380 medium-range ballistic missiles along with Talaya strategic cruise missiles to carry out the long-distance strike. The Ghadar missile, designed for precision strikes, is believed to have a range of up to reaching most of Western Asia and parts of Europe. The Talaya cruise missile, with an estimated reach of about 1,000 kilometers, is described by Iranian sources as capable of adjusting its target mid-flight. Iranian state media says the impact caused extensive fires aboard both the destroyers and the accompanying tanker. However, the US military has neither confirmed any damage or verified the Iranian claims. Tehran claims its missile and drone attacks against US naval assets and military headquarters in Bahrain have forced the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier to flee towards the southern Indian Ocean. Iran calls the strike a part of its ongoing retaliatory campaign, Operation True Promise 4, the one it launched in response to recent Israeli-US actions against Iranian leadership. The US, on the other hand, is carrying out overwhelming firepower from regional waters. US CENTCOM claims its guided missile destroyers are delivering unrelenting strikes on Iran. 2 days back, the US said its Navy ship launched Tomahawk land attack missiles in support of Operation Epic Fury. The simmering tensions between US and Iran have escalated into direct naval combat and a total blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Will this mark a dangerous new chapter in the West Asia tensions? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Well, markets are obviously nervous about the growth implications of broadly higher energy costs and potential supply issues from the Persian Gulf. But the ISM Business Survey suggests the US economy was gaining significant momentum in the early part of 2026.
However, the concern is that higher energy costs and geopolitical and economic uncertainty could become demand destructive and take some of the wind out of the sails. Now, the latest data underscores economic resilience and cooling inflationary pressures, which drove Wall Street stocks higher. That comes at a time when the war in West Asia clouds the growth outlook, which resulted in a wild sell-off in Asian markets.
However, Wall Street stocks recovered to rise, and the latest data show the US service economy expanded at the fastest pace since mid-2022, while a price index hit an almost one-year low. A rally in tech megacaps also drove the market higher, with the Nasdaq jumping over 1.5%. Bitcoin too reversed the immediate losses from the escalating Iran war and topped $73,000.
But crude still rose to around 7 war signals. Bilal Hafiz, head of market strategy at Macro Hive, said that if the 1990 Gulf War proves a template, oil could rise to as much as $100 a barrel within a month.
The main source of concern in markets right now is that the West Asia turmoil will transmit an inflation shock around the world. That was reflected in the rupee hitting a record low. The Indian currency fell nearly 1% on Wednesday, which is the most in 10 months.
It crashed to 92.3 per dollar. Panic swept through South Korea's trading floors as concerns over the conflict sent the world's hottest stock market to its biggest ever sell-off. But the trading reversed on Thursday, with Korean stocks recovering those losses.
The sell-off in Asia came despite US President Donald Trump's pledge to ensure the free flow of energy through the Persian Gulf. But insurance guarantees and even naval escorts drew muted enthusiasm from the shipping industry. Well, without the critical waterway, seaborne trade between some of the world's biggest oil and gas producers and the rest of the world is all but cut off.
In cricket, India and England will cross paths for the third successive time in a T20 World Cup semi-final at the iconic Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai today.
Now, India and England had met in the 2022 semi-final, where the latter inflicted a crushing blow on a Rohit Sharma-led side in Australia. Suffering a 10-wicket defeat, then India bounced back to their way to the title in 2024.
England dominated the Super 8s in Sri Lanka. The Three Lions thumped the hosts, New Zealand and Pakistan, on their way to the final.
India's path to the semi-finals has not been straightforward. Despite finishing top in the group stage, they faced tough tests in the Super 8s. Their campaign suffered a setback with a heavy 76-run loss to South Africa. The hosts responded strongly, bounces back with a win over Zimbabwe at the Wankhede Stadium.
They carried that momentum into a high-stakes clash against the West Indies at Eden Gardens in Kolkata. Chasing 196, India overcame an early stumble to steal a thrilling 5-wicket victory with 4 balls remaining. Sanju Samson starred with the bat, producing a super unbeaten 97 off 50 deliveries. A win in Thursday's semi-finals sees them move just one win away from winning their second consecutive T20 World Cup title.
Amidst the shadow of the ongoing war, will find a rare moment of relief at theatres.
Well, Marty Supreme, the critically acclaimed sports drama starring Timothée Chalamet, directed by Josh Safdie, is finally set to make its long-awaited theatrical debut in UAE on the 12th of March. Countries in the West Asian region have been making headlines for the ongoing war situation, while the reality of the war often dominates headlines. The arrival of this indie gem offers a brief window of escapism, at least for a few, allowing audiences to trade the tension. Set against the vibrant backdrop of the 1950s, the film follows the rise of table tennis player Marty Moser. Chalamet delivers a powerhouse performance as a gritty, charismatic dreamer, battling odds, rivals and his own internal demons to reach the pinnacle of the sport that is supported by a stellar ensemble cast, including Gwyneth Paltrow, Odessa Azion and Tyler, the Creator. Despite the film already being available on international streaming platforms in early 2026, the UAE release is being treated as a significant event for many. The act of gathered viewing in a packed theatre feels like a defiant return to normalcy in an era defined by uncertainty.
While the film arrives in the Emirates as one of the most decorated contenders of the 2025-26 awards season, Marty Supreme earned a staggering 9 nominations at the 98th Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, which is a rare feat for any indie sports drama. Chalamet's portrayal of Mauser has already garnered him the Golden Globe and Critics' Choice Award for Best Actor, along with 11 BAFTA nominations, and this heavy-hitting pedigree makes the March 12th release feel even more consequential, as UAE audiences finally get to witness a globally celebrated masterpiece that has become a symbol of cinematic excellence during a turbulent year. Well, that's all we had for you on World DNA today, but don't go anywhere. More news and updates will follow on the other side. Stay tuned. You're watching Beyond World is One.
Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is One.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
The problem with NATO is that
In an ever-changing, fast-paced world, identifying the pulse of global happenings is important. Because it is the pulse that truly measures the real nature of world events. It monitors the shifting geopolitical landscapes and anticipates what lies ahead. At WION World Pulse 2026, we tap into the heartbeat of events that matter to you and to the world. 7 pulsating themes, 100 plus thought leaders, 1 dynamic platform. WION World Pulse. The rhythm of the new world order. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these one. Get the latest updates.
destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is One.
vielleicht nur als Imposant.
Welcome back to WION World is One. You're watching Top Stories with me, Vidur Kathuria. Let's take a look at the top headlines we're tracking at this moment. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says he cannot rule out his country's military participation in the escalating war in West Asia. In his visit to Australia, he says Canada will stand by its allies. Lebanon's health ministry says 3 people killed in Israeli strikes on vehicles on Beirut's airport highway. The strikes come after a third day of Israeli bombardments in response to renewed Hezbollah attacks. US Central Command publishes videos showing strikes against Iranian missile launchers, saying its forces are hunting and destroying them with precision, while accusing Iran of indiscriminately targeting civilians. Saudi Arabia says it has intercepted 3 cruise missiles outside the city of Al-Kharj as the US-Israel war with Iran enters its 6th day. The US Senate rejects a resolution aimed at curbing President Donald Trump's 47 majority in the upper chamber of Congress and largely backing the president's decision to attack Iran. The Ministry of External Affairs rejects claims that Indian ports are being used by the US Navy in the Iran conflict, calling the reports false and misleading. China announces a 7% boost to its defense budget for 2026 as Beijing steadily increases spending to counter United States and enforce its claims over Taiwan and the South China Sea. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un oversees naval destroyer tests, including sea-to-surface missile launch, claiming his country is arming Navy with nuclear weapons. This after reaffirming military build-up goals at the party Congress. China has set its 2026 GDP growth target at 4.5 to 5%, the lowest on record as Beijing faces persistent deflation, weak consumer demand, and trade tensions with the US. The targets were announced during the annual 2 sessions meetings in Beijing. We begin this bulletin with some breaking news coming in. Explosions have been heard in Jerusalem after warnings of